Meg and Karan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
This is my first time being in this toit setup.
It's not comfortable.
Is it feeling toit for you guys?
I feel claustrophobic for you,
Yeah,
honestly.
I can feel both your kneecaps against my kneecaps right now, which is kind of nice because it makes me feel a bit more connected to you. Today, guys, we are talking about our careers in the fitness industry. And I have a few questions I'm going to put your way and would love to hear what your experiences have been like since entering the career. Now, Meg, you were on very recently talking a bit about your fitness career.
Yes.
We talked a lot about your training history, but also when you entered the fitness industry. So you've now been coaching for how long?
Going on, so this would be my 14th year. So I've done 13 to 14 years, but over a big variety of different disciplines. So not just CrossFit or personal training.
And give us a quick rundown on those different disciplines.
So I started out as a swimming teacher, a swimming instructor, and a swimming coach, which did involve one-on-one teaching as well. And then I went more into boot camps and calisthenics training, then a little bit more into bodybuilding vibe, and then into CrossFit.
Awesome. And that career has taken you kind of all over the world.
Literally.
Yeah, you have been, I'm going to try and get this right. You started in Dubai.
Correct.
That's where it all started. Abu Dhabi, technically we're going to say that's a different country.
Well, they feel very different.
South Africa, did you ever coach in South Africa? Coach in South Africa. Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so before I went Dubai, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, then South Africa, Saudi Arabia.
And now Hong Kong.
And now Hong Kong.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Karam, you have had, I think it's a pretty cool coaching journey.
Thank
and
you.
obviously my opinion is biased. But tell us a little bit about your coaching journey. So first question is, how long have you been coaching for now?
I think it's been 2.5 years. So I joined Coastal. I'm a product of Coastal and the process. So I joined Coastal in November 2021. We did a 6-month apprenticeship, mentorship, did the coaching course. That was 6 months, and I started coaching in-person classes and PT clients, I want to say April, May 2022. So it's just over 2 years that I've been coaching in person. It's 2 years.
Yeah, damn cool. So basically, Karan was, did you know that? Did you know Karan was apprentice?
I knew his journey, but I didn't realize it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he seems so much more experienced than that, doesn't he?
100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had, before Karan and Lou had done the apprenticeship program at the same time. Basically, it was like middle of the pandemic, early days of the pandemic. We had realized we need to bring new coaches in, but we couldn't bring in new coaches because no one could enter Hong Kong. Now, we had taken one coach, Lottie, through the apprenticeship program probably like 5 years prior to that, I think it would have been. And the apprenticeship program then was very informal. It was kind of like, I had it scribbled on like 50 different pieces of paper and kind of like gelled it into one. And kind of, she was our guinea pig to try and, bring someone who had zero coaching experience to the point where they could be a fully fledged coach with group classes and individuals. And then when Karan and Andrew came through in the pandemic, and we put it out there and we said, we're going to start an apprenticeship program. You guys were really like the first official products of an official apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
So super cool that you're still here and you're bloody good.
Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I think both Andrew and I were first members here. And then the opportunity arose, of course, because it was hard to get, foreign coaches to come in during the pandemic. And, I think it was a perfect timing for Coastal to invest in local coaches or within their community. And I think it's pretty cool that the two of us who should train together in the evening then went on to do it, and then we're now coaches here.
So my next question, I'm going to direct this to you, Karan.
Yeah.
Why did you want to be a fitness coach in the first place?
There are a few reasons. I think first is I've always enjoyed playing sports. I've always enjoyed going to the gym. Started going to the gym in my final year of uni. So that's about 2017. Did a lot of like bodybuilding, powerlifting style training. Then I joined Coastal during the pandemic or the start of the pandemic in 2020. And that was my first experience with CrossFit. So Coastal is the only place that I've trained and done and coached CrossFit. So I've always been passionate about health, fitness, sports, and in the last 4, 5, 6 years, being in the gym and lifting weights or conditioning, whatever it might be. And I know how much it does for me in terms of not just my physical health, but how much it means to me outside the gym in terms of my mental and emotional health. And I honestly believe that your physical health bleeds into other areas of your life, whether it be discipline or your mental and emotional well-being. And I know what an impact it has on me. And I want to be able to give that to other people and impact their lives, which is the mission of Coastal and the process, is to positively impact people's lives. And I felt like I wasn't doing that in my old job. I was in investment banking. I was a software developer. I felt like I was a cog in the machine. Yeah, I was making changes and small differences in the world, but I felt like I was replaceable. I felt like anyone could do this. I felt like I wasn't really making a real impact and changing the world. And I felt, okay, what's one thing I can do right now to make a difference, and what's the biggest way I can make that difference? And I felt it was through people's health and well-being. And I was looking to get in the fitness space, and this opportunity came at the right time where my contract expired at the investment bank. And I grabbed it with both hands. Like, I didn't even think about it. It was like a no-brainer for me. So yeah, I know what it means to me, and I want to be able to give that back to people.
Where does this like wanting to leave the world or wanting to impact the world or help the world, where does that come from?
I think it's a very like deep question. For me, it goes, so I go back to like death. I think it's quite dark, but it puts things into perspective. I think we're all going to die one day, and nothing else is going to matter. How much money we make or, what we acquire during our lifetime, materialistic wise, is really not going to make a difference. And I feel like what will matter is your legacy or the impact you can leave in the world. And in my 20s and my 30s, I think I want to do that through fitness. And in the future, God willing, I want to be able to do it through philanthropic means, and give back to the world and leave a legacy and impact the world in a positive way. So
Love that.
Really cool.
I resonate with that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Meg, why did you want to become a fitness coach?
So I grew up playing a lot of sport, but then I got really heavily invested in swimming. So I became quote unquote swimmer and spent a lot of my time swimming. When I finished high school, I had about a 6-month gap between finishing my year and then starting university in South Africa. So the year is like finishes and starts at different times. So I had between September and January to do basically nothing. And I decided to get a job instead of just sitting around waiting. So I stayed in Dubai, and I decided to become a swimming teacher and a swimming coach just out of something to do. It wasn't a drive or a force that was like, I want to be able to teach little kids how to swim. It was just a means to like pass the time, make some money.
I'm kind of good at swimming.
I'm kind of good at swimming, but it was a big eye-opening experience that because I had been doing something since before I can remember, I did not know how to teach it.
Yeah.
So that for me was like one of the first things I remember learning about becoming a coach was the steps and how to teach someone how to do something else is very different than just if you're good at it.
So basically you had time to kill. You needed to
make some money.
You needed to make some money. So you kind of had a little look at, okay, well, what am I good at?
Yeah.
What do I not mind doing? And coaching kind of just fell.
Kind of. And it was also like my coach at the time was like, hey, we need you to coach. I was like, cool. It wasn't like a driving force to get into that industry. I've always been a natural, I say natural, but I've always liked teaching people things. So I used to do maths tutoring when I was younger. I like explaining things to people, even throughout university as well. Like I always used to help people with other things. Like I've always been naturally inclined in helping people. But I didn't realize that when I started out coaching. That wasn't why I started. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, next question. I want you guys to think back to getting your first ever personal training client. Okay, so we're talking about one-on-one coaching here, not group classes.
Yeah.
Have you guys got that locked in now? Can you remember, do you know who your first client ever was?
No.
Okay.
But I can remember a very early time and specifically a client.
Okay, so we're gonna take ourselves back. We're transporting ourselves back in time right now.
Yeah.
To finding out that you have this client.
Yeah.
Karan, take me
Yeah.
through you finding out about your first client.
For me, it was Vineet, who was my first client. He came in through the Coastal front desk through Ops team, and I think we got paired together. I don't know if it was because we're both Indian, but it was a great pairing. So shout out to Vineet if you're watching this. Yeah, he was my first client. What was the question?
How did you feel when you found out, okay, Karan, you're going to have your first client now. You're going to now be responsible for this person in a way. And they're paying a lot of money now for you.
Yeah.
These are obviously thoughts that I had when I got my first
was quite excited because obviously, you know, when you go to the gym, which I did for 4 years before becoming a coach, you do your gym bro coaching, right? You're coaching your friends, you're coaching the people that you go with, and you're doing that. And you sort of know your stuff, but you sort of also, you know, bullshit your way through it sometimes when you're not educated enough or you've not gone through that mentorship. So I sort of had an idea of what I was getting into, but to know that now I can back myself because I've been mentored with people like yourself, with Tammy, with Alex, with Ant, who have like 10 plus years of experience in this field. I was certain of what I was putting out there, and I was excited to basically, Vineet was my guinea pig, to test out stuff that I learned in theory and stuff that I've also applied to myself on another person and see their progress. And it was and I still feel the same with any client, even now, when I see their progress, whether it be body recomp or they hit a PR or they're, you know, adding weight on weight on their lifts. It was quite exciting and definitely very fulfilling.
So you sound like you were confident. Like there was
so cool.
There was no anxiety. There was no fear of being inadequate. You were just ready to rock and roll.
Yes, I would agree. But for sure, you have your doubts. You start questioning. Sometimes when you start working, I guess, with higher level athletes or someone who has more experience in the gym, that's when you start questioning. But I think my first few clients were body recomp clients, and I was quite confident in what I was doing. And we had Liam at the time, who were doing like weekly PD, where we're going through basically the program that we were implementing on our clients, and we were being critically questioned on, you know, why we're doing this, why not this, you know, you're playing devil's advocate. And as long as we had sound reasoning and rationale and reasoning behind what we're doing, it made sense. So it wasn't that I was blindly implementing something. I was questioned and I had logic to it. And that made that having that approval from people who are more senior to me or more experienced than me definitely gave me confidence that, okay, I'm doing things right.
Must have been nice.
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
I'm guessing that you didn't have that, Meg. So tell us about your first PT experience.
So I started out swimming aside when I got into calisthenics coaching, more as an adult, and had to start taking on individual clients and one-on-one. It was extremely overwhelming. So I knew how to teach a skill. I knew the step-by-steps. I knew how I learned how to do certain skills. But in terms of programming, I had no guidance. I had very little people to question me, to ask why I'm doing things a certain way. And it was kind of like a trial and error. And I would fumble my way through it at the beginning until I found what really worked with a client. And I was aware enough to know that every client responds differently to certain things, and not everyone can have the exact same template. And I think that came from like my swimming background, but I didn't really know what that template looked like. I didn't really understand a structure, or that, you know, why things were done in blocks, or when to progress a client, or, you know. And for me, it was kind of like in the calisthenics world, it was like, cool, they've ticked that skill. Okay, now we can move on. It wasn't really like we were ramping up to that skill. We would just work on it every single session until they got it. So I really, it was trial and error, and I felt extremely overwhelmed.
So you were the kind of opposite to Karan. You were kind of shitting yourself a little bit. Yeah.
I really had the imposter syndrome feeling.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Was your first session, were you in a big gym with other coaches around? Were you in a small gym?
It was I would say medium-sized gym.
Yeah.
There are other coaches around. I did have a mentor at the gym, and they were good at their job. But again, I still don't think they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
I don't think they had a plan. I don't think they knew a structure. It was, again, kind of, this is the warm-up we do. I didn't really understand why we did those certain things. And yeah, it was very trial and error, kind of blindly leading myself through it.
Yeah. So my first client was, I was obviously, I'd set up Coastal Fitness and I was just a one-man band. So there was no one else that were a part of Coastal Fitness at that time. So I created my website and I basically like went live with the website and I just sat in my parents' living room the next day being like, just waiting. Literally just staring at my phone being like, please someone call me or please someone email me. I'd be sitting at my inbox just refreshing it.
You're waiting
like
for someone to just find your website.
Honestly, just waiting for someone to find my website. I'd done lots of like search engine optimization stuff with one of my good mates from school. He was into web development. So like he really helped me make this website as good as I could do. You know, I'd already written lots of blogs, even though I hadn't coached a person at this point in time, just to try and increase the likelihood of someone finding me. And I think it was like about 11 a.m. on that very first day that my phone rang. And it was Geraldine. And Geraldine is someone I ended up coaching for, 13 years. And she's only just stopped coaching with us, working with us as a client because, she's relocated back overseas. So yeah, she called me. I remember my personal training price back then, I think I'd started at 400 Hong Kong dollars an hour. So I think that's a quarter of what my fee is right now. And even in the industry average, that was like low. But I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'll do it for free. Just like, I just want someone to call me. So she called me and I remember, I still remember the phone call. She was like, not sure about the price and was trying to negotiate the price straight away. And I was basically like, yeah, like all good. Like, I'll give you a better price. I was just like, I can't believe someone's calling me right now. And I can't believe I'm going to be a coach. But I definitely felt like I had to play up to like the coach, the experienced coach. I was a bit intimidated and scared to think that she found out that she was my first ever client, that she would just hang up the phone and find someone else. So I definitely played up to this persona of like, I'm an experienced coach. Sure. Like, let me squeeze you into my schedule. How can I help you type thing? Anyway, so I was living in Chunmin at this time. So quite a way out. So she lived in the middle of town. So I was going to come to her apartment to coach her. So I think our first session was literally the next day. Wow. So I'd already
fit her into your schedule.
I managed to squeeze her in the next day.
Good for you.
So I'd printed all my assessment protocols, like all my client sheets. I had Coastal Fitness receipts that we were going to sign and she was going to get one copy. I was going to get one copy. But like you, Meg, I would look at this assessment and be like, I have no idea. No. That was something I plucked out of NASM. And I would look at it and be like, I don't actually know what information I'm getting from this thing, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yep.
So I rock up to her house. I've got obviously my Coastal Fitness polo on. I'm all geared up. She's probably thinking this guy looks bloody good. I walk in and I'm so fired up. I just can't believe I'm getting to coach someone now. So I'm walking into her residential gym. She was 2 months post-birth. So a pretty hard first client.
100%.
Yeah, for my very first ever client. She just had her first child. I was definitely not qualified. And honestly, my training approach was, looking back at it now, was awful. Definitely not the stuff she needed whatsoever. I walked in for this first session, had a bit of a swagger about me, being okay, I need to be confident. I can't let her see that I might be nervous. And I think our assessment, I had one look at my assessment sheet and then I ended up basically throwing it away and just freestyling for literally 40 minutes. And I would just think if any exercise would pop into my head,
you just do it.
I would just do it.
Yeah.
I think at one point I had to do a front plank on a Bosu ball for 30 seconds. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, get a lot out of that. Okay, great. Would pretend to write something down on a piece of paper. I was literally just blagging it for 1 hour.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but the good thing was, it is terrible. 100% is terrible. And the another funny thing is with Geraldine, I didn't tell her my age until 4 years into our coaching journey. In fact, I'm pretty sure I might have even lied about my age at the start because I was 20 when I first started coaching her. And, she's a mum. She's in her 30s. Yeah, it's a long time ago. Yeah. She's a mum in her 30s, right? So I don't think I lied, but I just would always just, divert the conversation to something else so she could never find out my age. And I think I ended up like shooting myself in the foot when I turned like 30. And she was like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? I was like, oh, it's my 30th birthday. She was like, pretty sure you were 35 years ago or something stupid like that. So yeah, that was my first one. But unlike you, I had no one else in this gym.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I also didn't have, unlike you two, I had no mentors. Like everything that I went into that session with was like self-learned, self-taught. I had no one to bounce ideas off. I basically had like free reign to write what I thought an assessment would look like.
Yeah.
I went into this gym. There was no one else in this gym. It was just, you know, a little residential gym, which actually felt a lot better for me because I felt like I wasn't being judged. I could just be, I'm going to say be myself. I clearly wasn't being myself.
Yeah.
But it made it a lot easier when I eventually transitioned into like personal training studios. That's when I really felt like the imposter syndrome and the anxiety. I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount. So I think 3 very different, like very different starts to our first journeys. I feel like Karan, you came in with like full confidence. You'd done the work. You'd had the mentors, had the team. You knew why you were doing things, so were able to come in and execute. And I remember, you know, your relationship with Vinith, you did a really great job with him. Meg, you sound like kind of similar-ish to me, but you had a mentor there, part of an organization that was doing this kind of stuff. So had frameworks to follow, just didn't know why you were following them. So, and then I would just bullshit my way through that entire first session. Yeah.
But I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. A lot of the things that I would take my clients through were things that I had learned myself. So unless I had first-hand experience in it, I didn't feel confident enough to coach someone through it. So a lot of the things I was doing was, it's like self-taught things. Otherwise, I didn't feel like I had the
I didn't. I wasn't like that.
Oh, really?
I was like just making up wishy-washy things that I thought might look cool and it might impress her.
Wow.
So yeah, I think because I was so insecure about being a brand new coach that had 0 experience and my age, I just thought, and this is obviously before Instagram days, but like I just thought like I've got to get the fancy things out here and I need to try and like wow her and impress her. And it wasn't really until like a year into my coaching practice that I went back to the basics and like the things that I knew worked and kind of like let go of all that stuff. I think a big reason for that though as well was in the education space in Hong Kong, a lot of the education that all the coaches were doing, who were much older than me. I was by far the youngest coach in the industry at that time. Most guys were like late 20s or 30s or 40s. Everything was like, it was Power Plate, it was TRX, it was Viper, it was all the
fancy looking
all the fancy kind of gimmicky things that today aren't really around anymore.
Have you done Power Plate?
Nope.
I've done my Power Plate. That one. Have you done your Power Plate?
No, I know, like I've experienced it.
And no, I've done my qualification.
I think Mark has too.
Yeah. So yeah, I got a lot of these certs, but the more and more I did these certs, the more confused I was.
Yeah.
You know, when I looked back at like what I had always done as an athlete, the things I was learning about were completely different. So I was really lost. I was like, have I been doing the wrong stuff all these years as an athlete? And now the professional fitness industry is telling me I should do it this way. You know, I've had all these structures and systems and periodization for all these years. Now I don't have any of it because no one's teaching me that. So I was just stuck in the middle being like, I don't know what's right or wrong. And I don't have mentors or anyone to ask, you know, what I should be doing here. So yeah, basically I was just very lost. And it really took me, like I said, about a year to find my feet before I really felt confident that I had, you know, my methodology and my way of doing things.
Incredible.
Okay, so I guess my next question was like, this is a question we haven't really answered other than myself. I want you to reflect back on your performance in that first session. I think you've alluded to it a little bit, but looking at yourself now and knowing what you now know, looking back to session number 1 as a professional fitness coach Karan, how would you rate your performance?
I give myself like a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Damn,
I love that you've backed yourself.
solid.
Solid.
Yeah. Definitely 7 or 8 out of 10 because you can always improve, and I would
Oh, 9.5 out of 10.
you can always improve. But a lot of the things that I implemented with, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, right? It was
Yeah.
2 years ago, and Vineet and I were training together for a year, so it was like a year ago. So a lot of the stuff that I implemented then, I still do implement the principles, the basics. They stand the test of time. So I wouldn't change anything with the way I implemented them. But for sure, there are things that I would change. Something that I've gotten way better at, but still need to get better at, is time management, right? So my time management with Vineet was,
I remember.
yeah, 1 hour
You'd pay
sessions.
for an hour and get an hour on top for free.
It used to be an hour and a half. I mean, you can still improve now, but
I was going to say, I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes it still happens.
that's something I need to work on. But it's drastically improved since then, because he was my first client, right?
You wanted to
And I wanted
over
to
deliver.
Yeah, I wanted to give him so much and give him everything that I knew that I wanted to impart to him, that the session just ended up. I used to literally, before I started a block, I used to get him to the office and I used to write out his block for him and explain everything that he's doing. If you remember the second block, I put up
That's
a post
incredible.
or a picture on Instagram explaining everything that why we're doing this, explaining my thought process behind that. And that was before his first session of the next block. And that was in my own time on a Sunday. So I was just excited to share everything with him. So I think definitely something that I would change is time management. And
But why do you, can I ask you,
Yeah.
why do you see that as something that needs to change? Why is that maybe something that is not good to do all the time?
It depends on the client. Some clients, like Vineet, his goal was to be able to train by himself. That was his end goal, to be autonomous and be able to go to the gym, be confident, know what he's doing, write out his own training for himself, and do that for himself. So for him, so it made sense for me to do what I did, to give him autonomy and make him understand what he's doing. And I think some clients do want to know what they're doing, and that brings in more buy-in, and they trust the process or believe in the journey a bit more, and it just gets more out of them in their sessions. Some clients don't really want to know. They just trust the wholeheartedly trust the coach, put their trust in the coach in their hands, and for them, I guess it's more of a emotional relationship. They're looking for connection or chats. So I really wouldn't. What I would change is you can definitely squeeze that in the 1 hour when you're resting in between sets, explaining to them what we're doing, why we're doing it, the bigger picture, where we are in this block, stuff like that within that hour, versus what I did, which was
Yeah, I think the thing that we all saw, when you were doing that, and we've all done it as well. I remember my early days, and I'd probably say it wasn't just like my first few clients; it was like my first years of coaching, just wanting to over deliver.
Yeah.
But I think it was about
Proving.
clear boundaries as well, right?
Right, yeah.
It's like if you don't create those boundaries from the start, then you need to understand that those boundaries are not going to exist forever. It's very hard to claw those back or create new boundaries, later down the line. And I think also being in a coaching in an organization where all your clients are in the same place and all the other coaches are coaching their clients in the same place. Also, fairness and transparency, making sure that we're giving equal love to everyone that we coach here, and certain athletes or clients aren't getting, they pay for an hour, they get an hour and a half if they get Karan on a Wednesday, but everyone else is getting their strict hour. So I think we identified pretty quickly that it was a really great thing that you were doing there.
Yeah.
But we've got to make sure that what we deliver isn't in line with what we say we're going to provide.
Yeah.
And when there's mismatch there, one way or the other, then it can lead to issues down the road.
Yeah, definitely. It's not scalable, right? When you have only one client, when it's your first client, you can afford to do that. But when you start building your roster and you have 4, 6, 7 clients, and you have classes and you have other commitments like non-coaching duties and responsibilities, you're taking away from that. And of course, uniformity within the team as well.
Yeah, nice. Meg, your first session.
So I think
Critique Meg in her first session.
So if I think back to, again, it's like calisthenics days, it's a lot more skill driven results than it is body comp or strength. More skill driven strength than it is, improving your back squat, for example. I remember my client really wanted to get a muscle up, and I felt like the best progression to get her there was to first work on like the pullovers on the bar, and she just couldn't get that. And instead of me still breaking it down further and still allowing her to build up to that, I was just relentless on, we're just going to keep trying.
Yeah. Just do better.
Yeah, we're just gonna do that again. Yeah. And we kept just like focusing on that rather than going back to her, you know, like, what is her end goal? What does she actually want to get out of this? And okay, that's not working. Maybe let's try another way. So I was quite like stubborn in my ways and like, well, this is how it worked for me. I got over the bar this way and I could work on my negatives and I could do this and that. So this must be the only way to do it. So I was quite stuck in my ways.
And was that your first session? You were trying to get a muscle up?
She came from a CrossFit background. So she had strict pull-ups. She had great strength already. And she came to me as like almost like a last chance, like last resort. She didn't really know what else to do. And she really wanted a muscle up for her CrossFit. So I again had no idea how to kip. I had never kipped before. So I was going to teach her a strict bar muscle up, but we never got there. And I wonder why.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of like alluding to some of the things that we struggled with in session one. Yeah. So I want us to zoom out a little bit more now and just think about early days of coaching. Yeah. So maybe we're kind of thinking now the first 3 to 6 months of our coaching careers. So obviously, Karan, you came in already knowing a lot of, you know, having been exposed and taught a lot of different principles, concepts, how to be and how to execute as a coach. Meg, you and I didn't have that as much. You probably had it a little bit more than me. Yeah. But reflecting back on your early days of coaching, Karan, I'll start with you. What did you find, again, relative to what you know now, what did you find to be the most challenging things as a one-on-one coach?
Oh, he backs himself.
No, I would say definitely back myself. I was definitely coddled, and I have the golden spoon here at Coastal, so I'm spoiled for sure. So there's no reason not to believe in myself for sure. I think
good answer.
No, I actually mean it. When I go to other gyms back home, I'm like, oh my god, I miss Coastal. But yeah, I think for me, it was one of the challenges I faced was keeping in mind the unique priorities or the client's goals, and not trying to find a fine line between too much variance and sticking with the same thing for every client. And we learned that in the course, right? Making sure we have that structure. So that was, I think, looking back, I was also trying to have too much variance to some clients because I felt like, oh, they might get bored of the same thing week after week. But I knew that that's how you make progress, and you just need to trust the process and progressively overload that movement. But on other instances, I found myself sometimes, choosing the same movements or similar movements for multiple clients when there could have been better options. And then that's when, we have PD on a weekly basis, and that's when we had our mentorship with you all, Liam, and you ask us, okay, how can we help you? And we ask Liam, okay, I think we are quite limited in terms of, okay, we're running out of exercises now. Could you teach us how to, work the same muscle in the same position, but just variance in the movements? How can we progress this movement across a year of like 3-4 training blocks? And it could be like just small changes, right? So I think, finding a fine line, a balance between having too much variance and also making sure you're not just being repetitive with your exercise selection. So yeah.
I think that's something that I fell into that trap as well. Same. I think Meg, you're nodding because you did as well. Yeah. But the idea that doing the same thing every week, which is what we get taught in, from a progressive overload standpoint, right? Which is that we pick a movement and we try to make it more challenging over a 2 to 8 week period. And that's how we create adaptations in that movement. What is a story that you were telling yourself when you were thinking, I need to change this? So what were you thinking that the client was thinking when they would see the same exercise in week 2 and week 3?
I think, if I'm being completely honest, one of the clients was a once a week or twice a week kind of client. And the fact I was scared that I might lose the client if we're doing the same monotonous.
Because why?
Because we're doing the same movements.
And what did you think, that they would feel bored?
They would get bored. We're
they would
talking
think
about.
you didn't know anything else?
I also, felt like after the first couple of sessions, I felt like I could not add any more value to that movement exercise at the time, not anymore. Which is why, I approached a few of the coaches here and asked them, okay, how can I, always cue something or have different cues? How can I always, it doesn't actually always have to be about talking about the movement of the exercise. So I felt at the time, if we have the same movement and we're progressing that, and I have spoken everything that I can about that movement in terms of cues, exercise, all the, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? The analytical stuff of the movement. Okay, we're back in week 3 now. What
a run out of things to say.
Yeah, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to say? So initially, my conversations or my 1 hour PT sessions were very revolved around talking about
the movements, the
exercises, the reps, what we're doing. But now it's evolved, it's changed. I think I've learned that a lot of the PT clients, a lot of clients actually do come here for the human connection and sharing that. And it's not so much about the analytical stuff. And once they understand that, you're progressively overloading and they're seeing results, week after week with what we're doing, as long as they're doing the right thing. And if there's something that goes wrong, you cue them that, you talk about that, why, you explain why, but then the other things you can talk about.
Yeah, nice.
So
yeah, I can fully agree. So I would find that you need to repeat something to get better at it. I knew that. But I wanted to constantly change things up because I didn't want them to get bored. I didn't want them to think I didn't know anything more. And I kept wanting to teach them new things. So I would find myself going, okay, well, I know they need to do strict pull-ups this many times a week to get better at their strict pull-ups. But at the same time, I was like, oh man, I really hope they don't think that this is all I know. And it definitely kept coming back to like, I have nothing else to really cue them on. I have nothing else to really say, even though they're not moving perfectly, even though we're still working in the right direction. I just felt like I didn't want them to think that I was, didn't know anything more. And that's what I kept trying to change things up.
We so often act out of an insecurity of feeling like the client will no longer see value in us as a coach if we are always doing the same thing. And I think that's really, when you dig a bit deeper, I think that's more of a catalyst than boredom. Yeah. But I think the pin dropping for me on this whole thing, because I definitely experienced it. I mean, the fact that I couldn't even follow an assessment because I was scared that they would find the assessment boring, like that just 100% exemplifies what I was feeling at that point in time. But when I got to a point of understanding that if there is a plan and they know what the plan is, then there's always buy-in, right? And if that plan is built together because it's built off their goals, and then, you present the plan to them and together you make that plan perfect as perfect as it can be for that person, then you so rarely get backlash from a client. Because I think it is legitimately a thing, right? That clients have often said to me in my early days of coaching, like, oh, we did this last week, why are we doing it again? And I think every time I would hear that, I would get triggered to be like, shit, I need to change this more again. I would just fall back into those old habits. But I now know, it's not soon realize, at some point I realized that it's like, well, if I can bring them in to this process and share why, doing the same thing is going to lead to them achieving their goals, like you did in your very first session where you mapped out, the whole plan for him, then you're rarely going to get that backlash. And I think that's probably, would you guys agree, that's probably where a lot of coaches probably drop the ball on, right? They have these elaborate plans in their head, which make a lot of sense. But the client is not aware of what that plan is and how it's going to get them from A to B. And therefore, they question the process, they question whether something should be better or different. And, I've definitely experienced that myself in many ways when I've hired or asked someone for help and the reasons haven't been given. I'm left there thinking,
Well, they don't know
I
what
don't know
they're
if
doing.
this is the best thing for me. I don't know if it's right. And you start questioning and what do you guys think about
I think 100% that, but I think thinking back to my early days as coaching, I don't think I knew a plan.
that?
So I knew kind of the end goal. I knew kind of which way to get there, but I didn't trust myself, or I didn't feel like I had enough knowledge to back myself up to be like, this is the plan, this is the roadmap, and then convey that to my client and be like, okay, now I need buy-in from you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know it myself.
Yeah.
So if I think back to still, like not even early days, like mid days of coaching, like I just wanted my clients to feel like they had a great session. So for me, that goal was for them to finish the session feeling either as tired as possible, or they learned something new, or they've got DOMs the next day. Like I always wanted them to get something tangible out of the session.
Yeah.
That was for me more of a priority than having a concrete plan. And I think that's where I was going wrong as a coach, is not having that GPS to fall on and not having that structure to go back to and be like, well, we're doing this because it's going to get us there. I just kept thinking, okay, well, you want to grow your glutes and your hamstrings? Let's go.
I just remember how anxiety inducing it was to me though. When you go into a session, you don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Which was basically what I was doing. It was like, okay, I need to entertain this person for an hour. And you're doing like one set of everything, and you'd set the exercise.
Yeah.
And they would start it, and I would just be thinking about the next exercise, being like, okay, what
am I gonna get out
what's
now?
available right now? And you'd be looking around the gym and being like, okay, as soon as they'd finished, you're not there's no cueing, correcting, improving whatsoever. You're just straight to the next exercise. And I remember so many times, getting like 30 minutes through the session being like, I run out.
Yeah.
Like I literally cannot think of another exercise, and just like the panic that would it would set off inside me, being like, oh my god,
what now?
They're having to sit there for 10 seconds and not doing something. Like they're 100% gonna fire me.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome to the max.
So I agree. It's like not having that plan there.
I think
was
I
the
had
crippling
like
part.
plans for that session. So I always had I would sit there on my notes and build together a plan. But that plan wasn't part of a bigger plan.
Right.
So I never had like I knew kind of their goals. I knew kind of the direction we're going in. I knew about progressive overload and that I had to improve and I had to ramp up. But I would probably ramp them up way too quick.
Yeah.
I would want every exercise to change every week so it felt fresh and exciting. So it wasn't there wasn't much structure to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just super unproductive, isn't it? Because you end up spending half a session just trying to teach someone something new, and they're never actually
But I thought that was
movement.
it.
Yeah.
I thought that was being productive.
Let's talk about imposter syndrome, because you've already mentioned it yourself.
Yeah.
Karan, you're probably going to say you didn't have any, but I'm going to say you did.
I definitely did.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start by just saying, like, the moment I started coaching my clients in a personal training studio was when I really felt imposter syndrome, and I'd be so conscious about what everyone else was doing around me, what the other coaches were doing with their clients, and constantly be questioning whether the thing I was doing was the right thing to do. I just thought I had like a million eyes on me and everyone was judging me. So for me, it really became real the moment I moved out of coaching people in their gyms and their little studios to like moving into like the commercial personal training studios. But Karan, you're saying yes, like that was something that was. So tell me about your imposter syndrome. What were you feeling?
I think for me, it was with group class coaching. When I started taking, I guess, the perform and compete classes on a Wednesday, that's something we've spoken about. I think a couple of conversations we had when walking by the waterfront, right? I definitely had imposter syndrome, coaching clients who I perceived, or actually in reality, are better than me at CrossFit or stronger than me, who can outlift me or are fitter than me. So I felt like, how can I coach that person? So I think that's where I had imposter syndrome. And we've had this conversation where if I can't do something, then it's hard for me to coach that person to do that thing. So when I'm not saying that I snatch a lot now, but at the time I was snatching 60 kg. How am I going to coach someone in the snatch? Because that's one of the major lifts on a Wednesday when you're coaching perform and compete athletes. And I think you have the opposite view, where actually I have the same view now. At the time I didn't, right? Where the view now is, I think a good coach can cue and correct and take the client or the athlete to their goal without them having that movement, or without them being able to do so, because you have the knowledge to do that.
Yeah.
I think now with, I guess, more experience in the last 2 years, and with the right resources around me, with all the PD and with just more tools in my toolbox,
and you going through the process of developing your own movements.
100%. Like, I still feel like I learn better by doing it myself. And for sure, I think Ant's very hard on me, and like he makes sure, I definitely have a hard time with him, but he makes sure
Just in
I
general.
understand. Yeah, just in general in life, I have a hard time with him, but I think it's for the better. I think he holds me to very high standards, and he makes sure that I go through it myself and I understand it, so that I can better explain it to someone, and I learn better that way, for sure, as well.
Yeah, I think on that point, I think where you were at that point in time was thinking that all of your coaching credibility came from your athletic credibility, right? So it was like people were only going to judge your ability to coach based on your ability as an athlete.
Yeah.
And I think, the challenge there, and again, I can totally resonate with that as well. I think all coaches, a lot of coaches feel that, especially in the CrossFit space, which is so performance driven. And we have clear metrics for every movement. How many muscle ups can you do? How much can you snatch? How much can you lift? And I think, the message that we're trying to get through was that, what they actually care is that what a client's actually looking for is that, number one, that you care about them, and you care about their progress, and you care about their journey. And, as a coach, they're actually looking for, they're looking for coaching cues, tips, things that can actually help them improve. And I think in that moment, in that interaction between client and coach, very, very few people are going to be thinking about, what you can actually do in said movement.
Yeah. I think for me also, that part of the imposter syndrome also came from the fact that I was a member first. So with the older members in the gym, I was training with them. I started CrossFit after them. And I was basically a year and a half into CrossFit when I became a coach at the same gym that we all trained together at. So that was one of the things that caused that imposter syndrome. I felt like, I had to earn their respect. And with time, over time, with experience, with knowledge, and as I also improved as an athlete, I think the members definitely accepted me as one of their coaches. And I saw that, higher athletes or higher performing members coming to me for cues and advice, and actually when I started seeing my cues clicking and it working for them, it sort of like validated that I can actually help them, even if I can't beat them.
The funny thing is, when I
we have a recording of that.
when obviously we first started Coastal, I existed in very much the same space. Like, I need to be better than everyone, and I genuinely was better than everyone at everything except for snatching. And do you know how I worked around that problem?
We didn't have snatches in the
Just didn't
program.
program snatching. And if you didn't program snatching, no one will ever know that you're worse than pretty much every person in that room. And obviously, about 9 months into the journey, we had all these experienced CrossFitters join the gym, and they were like, is there any reason that we don't snatch? And we were like, we made up some terrible reason. When I say I made up a terrible reason, which was like, snatching is, dangerous, bad for your shoulders, like, we shouldn't really be doing it. And they were kind of like, okay. So they would just hang out after class and all snatch. And I kind of just got to that point at some point, and I was like, this is ridiculous. My own insecurities are limiting all these people from being so much better than they are. So that's how I embarked on my journey. But now, I don't think I've been at the top of a leaderboard at the Process or Coastal for probably a good number of years. So there was this like turning of the tides where it was like, I was always the top, always the strongest, always the fittest. Obviously, don't include Ant, he doesn't count. And then I just slowly started to see, people start beating me in a lot of things. And actually, at first, obviously, ego takes a pretty big hit. But actually very quickly, I just spun that around to be like, this is really cool that the program that I'm writing is now getting people who've done this for less time than I have, who are a product of the coaching that we're giving them, and now beating me on these workouts. And it very quickly the narrative turned to be, this is actually something I'm really proud of and it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I want people to start beating me.
That's
and now
awesome.
where I sit on the leaderboards, I'm like mid-table if I'm lucky, on a good day. So it's very cool. And I think that kind of ego side of Ed the athlete versus Ed the coach is like really non-existent
That's
at
awesome.
all for me anymore. Yeah. Meg.
I can not relate to that side of imposter syndrome. So I think because my first ever experience of coaching, I was an extremely high level swimmer. And then going into the teaching and coaching side of it, I knew I was I had no experience in teaching. And from off the bat, I've always had the foundation of just because you can do something good doesn't mean you know how to teach it. And I've always had that kind of experience. Just because you know how to do something at a high level doesn't mean you understand the basics. And I think that's because I remember my mentor at the time teaching me how to teach someone breaststroke, and just to break down how your legs work in breaststroke. I had never thought about it before. So up until that point, I had never thought, oh, okay, so this happens and your knees stay in and your feet go out. Like, I'd never broken that down because it was so natural to me. So at that point, I was like, wow, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you know how to teach it or know how to break it down to a level that someone else can understand it. So I feel like for me, I've never felt like I have to be a better athlete to be a better coach. But for me, the imposter syndrome kicked in more of, well, I still don't know enough as a coach. Like, I don't know enough. I'm never going to know enough. And like, it was this overwhelming feeling of like, I don't know why we need to add weight. I don't know when to add weight. I don't know when to decrease reps, increase weights, things like that. I just feel like I didn't know enough as a coach.
And sorry to interrupt, but was that feeling like you didn't know enough as a coach relative to the people around you, or you just felt yourself that you didn't have enough understanding of the things that you were prescribing?
I think it was a little bit relative to the people around me, but it was also the fact that I felt like I was putting up a front to my clients, if that makes any sense. So I felt like I was telling my clients, okay, we're going to get you this goal, but I felt like I was almost not sure of how I was going to get there. So it was like a little bit about the people around me, but at the same time, I had this little feeling that we all felt the same. Like, we all didn't really know what we were doing. And I didn't really know how to get my client exactly the route to get them to that goal. So that's how I felt, that imposter syndrome of like, I'm somewhat bullshitting my way through this.
And so can I ask, I'm going to start with you on this one, Meg.
Yeah.
So if that was Meg in her early days of coaching and imposter syndrome being what you just described.
Yeah, like uneducation. Like uneducated is what more of the imposter syndrome.
Do you still experience imposter syndrome now as a coach?
Yeah, but not as like overwhelmingly. Like, I still have to check in with myself and be like, we're never going to know everything. And I think now, me being more open and vulnerable with my clients, if they were like, okay, I want to learn how to do this, or this is my goal, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to put in the time to learning more about that, rather than being like, yeah, sure, I know how to do that. So I
the
think
imposter syndrome that you still experience now is the same reasons that you experienced it way back then.
It's definitely improved. It's definitely improved. But it's kind of like, the more you learn, the more you realize how much you've got to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's still what's kind of driving that.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned so much, not only in my time, the past like 5 years, but even my time here at Coastal, and going through the individual coaching course. Like, I've learned so much, and it's ticking a lot of boxes and making me more confident in who I am as a coach. But at the same time, it's like, wow, there's still so much to learn.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, we've got to make sure we're vulnerable enough to be open with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Karan, imposter syndrome, does it still play a part in your life now?
Yes, but not with the old context of coaching higher level athletes or, high performing athletes. I think in that sense, I approach that now with two different hats. Like, I'm a coach, but I'm also an athlete. And as a coach, I know I can help someone that is a high level athlete with my knowledge and my cues in my toolbox, so I can help them for sure, and I want to do my best to help them. And then when I wear the athlete hat, I'm still going to do my best to beat them, but I want to be the best version of them. So I want to give them everything that I can give them, and hold nothing back from them, and try to help them. So I don't have imposter syndrome in that sense, of coaching higher level athletes. I think now for me, the imposter syndrome comes more so from if it's a new frontier or like a different client with a unique goal that I haven't done before. Like if it's body recomp, or if it's coaching a CrossFitter with a certain skill, if it's stuff that I've done, stuff that I'm confident with, stuff that I have the resources or the knowledge or the prior knowledge with, then that's fine. But if it's a new challenge, then I feel like, okay, I don't know enough. I need to,
But is that feeling of I don't know enough? Is that a feeling of I don't know enough, therefore I don't know if I can deliver? I can deliver to this client, or is this I don't know enough, and therefore in comparison to the people around me, I now feel like I'm inadequate?
I think it's both. I feel like, within the team, there are people who have their expertise area of knowledge, in different fields. And there are people with, way more years of experience, than me. So I feel like, for sure, there are people on the team that can do a better job than me at certain things, whether it's like, a particular goal. But then also feels like, okay, from a personal point of view, I'm like, okay, I don't know where to start. Where do I begin to help this client with their unique goal that I haven't dealt with before? So I think it's a combination of the two.
Nice.
Yeah, I can relate to both those sides of comparing yourself to others and feeling inadequate, and then also imposter syndrome in the fact that I don't know enough.
Yeah.
And putting yourself down that way as well.
I think something that's really helped me with imposter syndrome is because there's definitely still times where I meet people who I feel are much more intelligent or know a lot more than me, especially like on a specific area within coaching. And I think in the old me, I guess it's my protective ego that would have triggered the imposter syndrome, feeling like I'm not good enough because this person knows more than me. And therefore, like, I need to be better, or therefore I shouldn't be doing this because there are people doing this better. And I think just again, flipping that narrative to now, when I meet someone who knows more than me, or I feel like there is someone who is, more experienced, or, whatever, fill in the blank. It's now, I guess, still get that trigger. I still get that feeling of like, okay, you're no longer the smartest person in the room, or there's someone right now who knows more than you. But rather than feeling inadequate, it's okay, how can I learn from that person? What has that person got to give? This is a cool opportunity for me now, where I can actually I have this person's resources, and either I can ask them to help me improve, or this is an inspirational moment that I can now leave and seek that information myself. So as an example, when you joined the team and I realized how damn good you were at handstands, I was like, why would I not want to learn from this person? Like, and I learned in 30 seconds.
30 seconds. We've got a while to go.
We'd be coming on Sundays, guys, and we're doing some secret training. Within 30 minutes, like I acquired a lot of knowledge. And I only was able to attain that because you put yourself out vulnerable enough to say, Meg, you know more than me. I would love for you to teach me something that I can now take on. But there's still the initial feeling. There's that initial bite that says, whoa, like this person knows more than you. But
on the flip side, in that situation, I had that little thing of like, oh, Ed knows so much more than you. Like, what are you going to teach him? Like, how can you teach him anything? So in that little moment, I also had the flip side of the imposter syndrome of like, oh, I've really got to step up my game here to make sure that I do teach him something. And I've really got to, so put that pressure back on myself again. So we both had that little moment of imposter syndrome.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
You're nodding your head away there. Graham, what are you nodding about?
I was just thinking of the 30 sessions because Meg's not been here for 7.5 months. If you came every Sunday, that's 7.5 months.
You did all the maths in your head.
We're actually doing 5 hours of back-to-back, so that's 5 sessions on a Sunday.
Fair. I mean, for me, I think it's more so that everything that I've learned is from here. So I understand what Meg's saying, that she felt imposter syndrome, like what can I teach Ed?
Yeah.
So for sure that I feel that way. Because I don't know what I could probably teach you.
But it's interesting. It's like, okay, so in the same way that, you know, Meg has taught me something in handstands that I never knew, that has like massively improved my craft and be able to help other people in their handstand journeys already. I come to you for other things, you know, if it's like maths or numbers
I was about to
or
say, think quick.
organization or critical thinking about problem solving, which, you know, might not necessarily be in the coaching space right now.
Yeah.
Like there are so many other things that you help me, you know, and I get inspired by, you know, the level of knowledge, experience, and attention to detail, I think is probably what it is. You know, attention to detail on something that I would have just blown over and being like, I'm gonna do a roundabout way to find the answer really, really fast.
Yeah.
You know, you go away, you think about it overnight, you come back the next day. And that for me, that's something very admirable. And I think every single person within this team, whether it's on the coaching floor or not, you know, we are all bringing something to the table that's helping each other level up in some way, shape or form. And, you know, it's just like, I think if you came to me and blew my mind with something coaching related, I'd be like, that's weird. Yeah. How's this guy that, you know, has essentially gone through my apprenticeship program now teaching me something on coaching? So it's probably not an expectation that I have. If you did, awesome.
Let's do it.
I'm sure. I mean, there's so many things that I don't know.
I think it'll probably come from a sport that I played or stuff that I did before.
But then again, you got a tennis scholarship and I beat you at tennis. So
I set myself up there.
Even thinking about that, I'm not sure there is.
But there's like, when you think about that with a client, for example, it's like, oh, well, what can I teach this person? They know so much more than me. A lot of the time, just being with your client and asking the right questions, you don't have to always answer those questions, but just being in that environment, and you're talking about problem solving, just being in that environment, you asking the right questions. You don't provide probably the answer, but you're facilitating that environment that can push someone into like discovering something new.
Yeah.
So it's not always the time like, what can I teach this person? It's what environment can I create that we can both learn something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say, I think on the whole, like not knowing if I can help someone, I still have that.
Yeah.
You know, just recently, I have one of my clients that I've coached for, you know, 10 plus years. He's a rugby player and he really wanted to work on sprinting mechanics and getting faster. And I work with him predominantly remotely. And, you know, I was really honest with him, like, you know, sprint drills have probably changed a lot since I was doing sprint drills. I said, I can have a go, but I'm not sure the stuff I'm going to be giving you based on the current set of knowledge I have is going to be the most up-to-date stuff. So like, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
You know, please understand that this is not my area of expertise, but I'm happy to give it a go. And I think through that, we had a conversation and talking about, you know, front side, backside mechanics. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is totally new. I know what the front side mechanics concept is talking about, but that's not something I was taught when I was learning how to sprint, you know, as a rugby player. And so it was really cool. I would still say that I'm still very novice in where my knowledge is relative to a sprint coach.
Yeah.
But, you know, just by being honest with him, you know, he basically had the option to basically say, no, Ed, I'll go find a sprint coach somewhere else and probably get a lot more out of it. Or maybe this is kind of cool that you're trying to help me on this.
Yeah.
Let's work together. And I know that you're not going to be perfect to start, but we'll kind of get there. So I think, you know, having that mindset of like you guys have both alluded to already, like we don't have all the answers, admitting when you don't have the answers, you know, has really helped me with imposter syndrome as well.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be someone that I'm currently not, which I think is where a lot of imposter syndrome comes from, right?
Yeah.
We have this image that we should be somewhere relative to where we currly are, and that creates a lot of insecurities and whatnot.
It can also hold you back. So if
100%.
you had that feeling of, I can't teach you anything in this, you wouldn't have opened up that door to learn more about it. And now you definitely probably feel a lot more confident to teach someone in sprint mechanics.
And it's actually something just through that is something that I know I want to learn more about.
Yeah.
So if I have the opportunity to attend like a sprint course or work with a sprint coach, it's definitely an area that I would like to kind of dive into a little bit more out of interest.
That's really cool.
Okay. So I think one of the things that we talk about, it's one of our values, my last question for today, is have a growth mindset. So the whole idea behind a growth mindset is that, we've got, contrary to that, the fixed mindset, which is I am who I am and I'm never going to change. The growth mindset challenges that and says that, you can be anything, you can learn anything. So, as a team, we are always trying to work on things, whether it's professional or personal. So my question to you guys now is, as a coach, what is the current thing or things that you are working on? Meg, I'll go to you first.
So for me, it is so going through the individual coaching course recently since I got here, and having the structure of the GPS to fall back on. For me, it's making sure I adhere to that. So going back to that structure every single time when I'm programming sessions for my clients, following my blocks, and having that route to get there and explaining it to my client that this is why, or clients, this is why we're doing this. For me, that is what I'm currently going through.
Awesome.
And I love it.
So GPS is basically the framework that we teach in the course, which is before we sit down to write a training cycle. G stands for general. So what are the general focuses? Like how long is the training cycle? What are the general goals we're working towards? How many sessions a week are they doing? The P stands for priorities. What are the main priorities for this client in this training cycle? And then the S is a structure. How do we take those goals and those priorities and map it into their week? If they're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, what are the general focuses of each training day? And when we have that framework, it makes the day-to-day, the week-to-week programming so much easier.
And I love it. So for me, then having that and being like, okay, because I still fall into that mini mindset of, wow, they did this last week. Is it boring that they're doing it again this week? And still wanting to always bring them something, always wanting them to leave that session learning something new. So it brings me back to that, like, okay, well, we're doing this for this many more weeks. We've got a route that we're like, got a plan and a structure that we're aiming towards because these are your goals. It leaves me with a lot more confidence in my decisions as a programmer. So that's something that I'm enjoying learning and discovering more. And that's something I'm working on currently.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, Aaron, what are you currently working on?
I think for me, with the client, one of my clients, he has an injury, and he's working with the physio. He's doing a lot of rehab. So for me, it's wanting to go outside my comfort zone and learn of how I can help him and how we can work together to get him back into the gym and start training again, with whether it be rehab work or whether it be mobility work, stuff that I'm not the best at when it comes to taking myself through it.
Did you like my tag today on Instagram?
Very appropriate. It's very true.
What was it?
It was sorry to cut you off in your training course, but I was laughing so much thinking about it. It was like there's like 3 people dancing in a line.
Yeah.
And basically the first person is like, it says strength training, and the second person that says aerobic conditioning, and the third person on his head it says mobility. And then they're basically trying to do a synchronized dance, and the mobility dude is just totally out of whack. He's like in his own world.
Just underperforming completely.
It's really good.
Yeah, so for me, it's always trying to, I guess, upskill myself and not get stagnant. And I think right now, it's to help this client and see what I can do to help him, whether that be speaking to Eleanor, the physio we have in-house, or just going away. I've had conversations with Ant, and he always pushes me to, okay, don't just let the client, try to figure it out by himself, or, why isn't the client coming to you for help with the rehab and the mobility issues? You can, have that collaborative mindset where you're like, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to come back with you with a solution or with a question to probe you, and we can work on this together. I think that's something that I want to get better at, and something that I'm currently working on. And apart from that, time management.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I know we talked about this as a group recently. And you'd mentioned that you have a client that was away because of an injury. And I think I arrived at that very same conclusion, when I had my first client leave because of an injury, not because of something that we'd done in here, but it was a sporting injury. And it was the idea that I would love to be able to be the person that people come to, to be able to help come back from anything, whether it's like it's illness, it's sickness, it's injury, it's whatever the reason, I want to have the knowledge to be able to help that person. I'm not saying that, we're not here to replace physios and doctors. In fact, we're here to work collaboratively with those guys. But, this is the whole idea of being a generalist. We talk about this on the course, right? The importance of being a generalist and having, knowledge and skill sets from so many different disciplines is just going to allow you to draw on all these different tools when you need it. And when you don't only have one set of tools to use, the moment your client has a problem that exists beyond the tools that you have, what do you do?
Exactly.
And that's where you as a coach have kind of hampered your ability to be effective because you don't have those tools. So I think for us, we're always looking at what tools can we add to our toolbox that we may never use, or we may use in 5 years time, but you've got those tools there and they're never going to leave you. So constantly striving to level ourselves up, as you said. Awesome. Guys, this has been a great conversation. I did want to just finish by quickly talking about the individual coaching course, because when this podcast comes out, we are just about to start our next cohort, which Meg, you have been on. Karan, you are going to be a part of this next cohort. So the individual coaching course is all about, upskilling and helping coaches in the individual coaching space, whether it's personal training or remote coaching, to be world-class coaches. And so we cover everything from assessments to, nutrition, lifestyle, to program design, to writing energy system sessions. And then I think the last stage, which I think is maybe my favorite stage, which is talking about how to develop yourself as a person and the coaching professional. So if you are a coach, or you're someone who's always had an interest in learning about coaching practices, or you just love training, you'd love to know the science behind the madness that you follow every single day, then we have two different options for you guys. We have the solo one where you can follow along at your own time, take your own time through it. There's assessments and assignments that our coaching team will respond to and give you feedback on. Or of course, you got the cohort model where you can join a group of great coaches and even be on the cohort with Karan. And you'll be joining us for 7 calls over 3 months, where there'll be plenty of conversations, problem solving together, and again having all your assignments and assessments marked. And the last one is, if you want to work with me as your mentor, you can also do that. We'll work one-on-one through the course. Karan, Meg, it goes without saying, I tell you guys this all the time, but I love you both very much, and I'm very grateful to have you both on the team. I've loved, Karan, seeing your journey from being an apprentice, for being a client, to now being one of the most highly respected coaches here, and not just here, I think in the industry in Hong Kong and in Asia. That's testament to all the work that you put in. Obviously, Meg, have followed you for a long time, and had a chance to work with you as your coach for some time, but knowing that you were going to be joining this team was going to be seriously leveling us up, and not just in terms of handstands and calisthenics, but just in terms of your aura and your positivity that you bring in here, and as well as all the experience that you bring as a coach. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast and sharing your stories.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.